Orlia was a city built on reflection. Glass towers mirrored each other until the skyline folded inward. I arrived with 2 suitcases and a single promise to myself. No more chaos. No more family. Covalent Analytics hired me 3 weeks later. The office was sterile, perfect, almost silent. People spoke in data, not emotion. That suited me. My title was Compliance Architect. It sounded grand, but meant control. I designed Aegis, a system that hunted lies. Every vendor, every transaction passed through my code. If something didn't fit, it screamed. Rules. Patterns. Integrity. All the things my childhood never had. Aegis became my refuge, a wall between logic and betrayal. I spent nights staring at glowing lines of code. Each command felt like a prayer for order. The system never argued, never lied, never hit back. It only obeyed. My apartment overlooked the eastern docks. I liked watching the cargo ships drift in at dawn. They moved slow, heavy, predictable. I envied them. Every morning, I built a life made of precision. Coffee at 6. Office at 8. Meetings that began and ended on time. Perfection felt mechanical, but it was peace. People called me distant. They were right. Distance was safety disguised as professionalism. Evan Cross, my direct superior, never noticed. He liked my reports clean and my voice quiet. Reliable, he said once, tapping my shoulder. I nodded. He didn't know I hated being touched. The company moved fast, chasing its next funding round. Deadlines multiplied like bacteria under a microscope. Investors wanted numbers. Richard Vane, the CEO, wanted worship. He spoke about growth as if it were salvation. I just wanted systems that didn't bleed. Sometimes, late at night, I heard the city hum through the windows. The sound reminded me of the fluorescent buzz in my mother's kitchen. It used to make my stomach twist. Now, it just meant the servers were alive. Data never forgot. That was comforting. One evening, I watched a power surge roll across the monitors. It flashed red, then stabilized. A glitch harmless. Still, I sat there long after everyone left. The hum of the machines felt like breathing. I wondered if peace always sounded so artificial. The janitor passed by, nodded once and moved on. I stayed. It was easier to face empty screens than real people. In the reflection of the glass, I saw my own face. Calm. Still. Untouched. A woman made of routines and firewalls. That night, I realized something simple. Order wasn't freedom. It was armor. And I would need it. Because somewhere beyond the neat reports and corporate smiles, chaos was already forming. It was waiting behind a login screen, patient and invisible. And it had my name in its code. The email arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. Subject line, vendor approval urgent. The sender was Evan. His tone carried that familiar pressure disguised as efficiency. Harborline Systems. A name I'd never seen before. The attachment was a single PDF, half complete, half redacted. No history, no credentials, no traceable address. A shell. I opened the Aegis portal and began the vetting process. Within seconds, red alerts pulsed across my screen. Missing tax ID. Obscured banking data. Owner identity, unverified. It was the kind of file the system was built to reject. Minutes later, Evan appeared at my desk. He smiled like a man, pretending not to be desperate. Just push it through, he said. Richard wants it cleared before Friday. I frowned. That's 72 hours. It fails every rule we have. He shrugged. It's been personally approved. I hated those words. They always meant someone powerful wanted a shortcut. I reopened the file, staring at the corrupted fields. Data missing, overwritten, intentionally blurred. The pattern looked familiar. Not technically, but emotionally. It felt like someone hiding behind my childhood all over again. I clicked a private terminal shortcut. The cursor blinked like a secret heartbeat. I entered command, log mode shadow true. A second system came alive, invisible to everyone else. Every keystroke, every edit, every override would be copied there. If this vendor was a lie, I'd have proof. Evan leaned over my shoulder. Done yet? Almost, I said. My voice was steady, empty. He didn't notice the second window, open behind the main console. When he left, I completed the override. Aegis went silent, the red turned to green. Harborline Systems was officially approved. On paper, everything was perfect. In truth, I had just armed a time bomb. That evening, I sat in the dark office, screens glowing like watchful eyes. I opened the ghost log. Each line of code scrolled downward like a confession. There was no satisfaction, only clarity. This wasn't compliance. This was submission. The system obeyed because I told it to. I hated how human that felt. The rain outside made the windows vibrate. I thought about my mother's voice, calm and final. Erase our number. The world kept erasing me, one command at a time. But not this time. This file would not disappear into silence. I added one last entry to the log. Note, manual override executed under protest. Operator, L. Ward. Timestamp locked. Encrypted and hidden. I shut down the terminal. The office went dark, except for the faint hum of servers. Something was wrong, and I could feel it breathing through the cables. Harborline Systems. A ghost with my signature on its forehead. And ghosts, I'd learned, always come back. The knock came just after noon. 3 sharp taps, precise, official. When I opened the door, a courier stood there. Certified delivery, she said. I signed without thinking. The envelope was thick, heavy, expensive. My name wasn't on it. It was addressed to Thomas Pike. My breath stopped for a second. I hadn't heard that name in months. He didn't live here. He didn't even know this address. Yet the letter had found me. I turned it over. Return address, Bray and Holt, attorneys at law. My hands tightened around the paper. For a moment, I thought about throwing it away. But curiosity is a disease that never really heals. I slid the knife under the seal and opened it. The paper inside smelled like printer ink and arrogance. At the top of the page was a header. Regarding Harborline Systems. My heart stuttered. I read faster. Words blurred. Covalent analytics. Software contract. Payment authorization. The signature at the bottom stopped me cold. L. Ward. My name. It wasn't my handwriting. It was a digital imitation, neat and unnatural. He had forged me. Thomas Pike had signed my name to a deal with my own company. For a moment, I couldn't move. It was like being 16 again, locked behind his voice. He used to say, I'd never be more than a tool. Now he'd turned that prophecy into paperwork. I spread the documents across my kitchen table. Page after page, the pattern unfolded. An old tax form from years ago. A business registration. Bank statements under my social security number. He'd stolen my identity long before I ever left Cinder Hall. I felt the air leave my body. He had built Harborline Systems, using me as its foundation. That's why the tax number was half redacted. It wasn't missing. It was mine. He had buried my life inside his fraud. I pressed my palms flat against the table. The edges of the papers cut into my skin. Every detail was a violation, wrapped in bureaucracy. But inside the fear, something colder began to form. Precision. Focus. This was no longer family business. This was data. And data could be traced. I took a deep breath and gathered the pages. Each one slid into a plastic folder, crisp and exact. Evidence. I opened my laptop and scanned every file. Each page became a digital shadow, time-stamped, encrypted. No more hiding. No more erased history. He thought he could use my name and vanish. He didn't understand the system he'd stepped into. It was my world now. Numbers don't lie. Logs don't forget. And I was done being someone else's signature. The night was silent, except for the hum of my laptop. I had scanned every document, every false line of ink. The data formed a pattern only guilt could make. Bank records, vendor codes, and forged signatures aligned. Each thread connected covalent analytics to Harborline. And every path led straight back to Thomas Pike. He wasn't hiding behind fake accounts anymore. He was siphoning money from the company through me. My identity had become the perfect smokescreen. Clean credit. No criminal record. A daughter who vanished. He had built a ghost company in my name. And now it was feeding on my employer's funding. I opened the secure archive and labeled the folder Case 0. Every file was duplicated, encrypted, stored offsite. If he erased me again, I would still exist in code. I stared at the transaction dates until my eyes ached. The first large payment appeared 18 months ago. $250,000. It matched the timeline of our last funding round. Then came smaller deposits, quarterly, predictable. He had turned fraud into a schedule. Each entry was a wound. Each zero a reminder. I could almost hear his voice in the data. That mocking calm, the tone that used to silence me. But now his words were numbers, and I knew how to speak their language. I made coffee that tasted like metal and resolve. My apartment smelled of rain and burning clarity. I began mapping the flow of money line by line. Internal transfers, third-party processors, delayed clearances. The web grew wider. Covalent was bleeding, and no one saw the wound. I traced the chain to a Delaware registration file. Harborline Systems, owner listed as independent contractor. Thomas Pike. My name appeared in the background metadata. A signature he forgot to erase. It wasn't just theft. It was identity murder. I closed the window and sat very still. Fear tried to climb back into my throat, but it didn't fit anymore. There wasn't room for it. Only calculation. I gathered the originals and sealed them back in the envelope. Tomorrow, I would return them to the sender. No evidence that I had opened them. No trace left behind. But I had my copies, perfect and untouchable. In a locked briefcase under my desk, they waited. I wrote a single line in my encrypted journal. He made the first move. Now it's mine. The words glowed against the dark screen like a quiet oath. I closed the laptop. Outside, thunder rolled over the skyline. For the first time, I didn't flinch at the sound. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. And I was learning how to control its direction. The investigation began quietly, hidden beneath my normal reports. No one noticed the extra queries, the late-night logins. I created a sandbox network, isolated from the company mainframe. There, I built a tool called Linkweaver. It mapped relationships the human eye ignored. Emails, contracts, payment trails, every digital fingerprint. I entered the data from Harborline and watched the web grow. Lines connected departments that shouldn't touch. Operations. Finance. Executive review. At the center pulsed the name Evan Cross. His approval signature was everywhere. The same man who told me to push the vendor through. He wasn't just covering for a mistake. He was part of it. I followed the metadata deeper, tracing hidden communication nodes. Encrypted messages, deleted calendar invites, off-book transfers. Each clue sharpened the picture. But one line branched farther than the rest. A faint dotted path linked Harborline to an outside entity. Northcrest Holdings, a private equity firm registered under the name Isabel Vane, the wife of our CEO. I stared at the connection until the room tilted. It couldn't be coincidence. I pulled the incorporation records from Delaware's database. Northcrest owned 40% of Harborline Systems. The rest belonged to Thomas Pike. Two worlds colliding, my past and the company's future. Richard Vane was funneling investor money through his wife's fund. Thomas was the operative, the face of the fraud. Evan was the bridge inside Covalent. It was elegant and disgusting at once. I documented every finding, building a perfect sequence of proof. Screenshots, registry extracts, internal memos, approval chains. Each file stamped, encrypted, and backed up. The web was complete. But exposure wasn't enough. Reports could be buried. People like Richard didn't fall to paperwork. They fell to timing. I opened my private log and wrote a new line. The structure is finished. Now I wait for movement. I left the office long after midnight. The streets were empty, slick with rain. The city smelled like electricity and guilt. In the reflection of a glass tower, I saw my own outline. Small. Still. Alive with calculation. They thought I was a compliance officer. I was becoming something else. A designer of consequences. Every keystroke I had made built toward this moment. I no longer feared his shadow. Thomas had taught me how systems break. Now he would learn how they collapse. Back home, I pinned the names on my wall. Evan. Thomas. Isabel. Richard. 4 points in a perfect square of greed. At the center, one line in red marker. My name. The connection they didn't know existed. The ghost in their design. The one ready to pull the switch. The plan began with a single invoice. Small, unremarkable, deliberately boring. Vendor, Harborline Systems. Description, Q4 Integration Consulting. Amount, $2,480. It looked harmless enough to pass without review. I embedded a string of invisible code in the metadata. A digital die pack hidden beneath the numbers. Once approved, I could trace its journey through every system. Submission took less than 3 minutes. Approval came in 6. Evan Cross signed it without even opening the file. His digital signature blinked on my screen like confession. The payment was queued for the next financial cycle. I sat there, watching the transaction ID appear. The bait was live. 24 hours later, the system showed completion. Funds transferred, but not where they were supposed to go. The payment had split in transit. One deposit went to Harborline's account. Another, smaller, drifted to a new name. Pike & Sons Custodial LLC. Registered agent, Thomas Pike. He was still using the same P.O. box in Cinder Hollow. A ghost mail drop for a ghost man. My tracer had worked. I followed the data trail through the intermediary banks. Each hop confirmed the fraud in motion. 2 systems, 1 lie perfectly aligned. The pattern was complete. This was my trigger. I opened the Aegis admin console. In the quiet of my apartment, the screen glowed cold blue. Command line ready. Protocol re-12, armed. The clause I'd written a year ago waited for activation. If a vendor lied about family connections, the system would freeze everything. Payments, contracts, access, instant lockdown. And it wouldn't stop there. 3 encrypted packets would detonate outward. 1 to the bank. 1 to our insurance carrier. 1 to the independent audit board. 3 arrows. No recall. No mercy. I typed the vendor ID for Harborline. Status, pending manual execution. I didn't click yet. Timing mattered. If I hit execute too soon, they could contain it. I needed them exposed, mid-celebration, surrounded by witnesses. That was the architect's way. Build the fall, then make them walk into it. I scheduled the audit committee meeting for Tuesday morning, the same hour as the investor demo. 2 rooms, 2 realities colliding. I attached a summary packet. Dry, professional, harmless looking. The kind of email no one reads until it's too late. Then I prepared my own dossier, the real one. Proof of the connections, signatures, transfers, ownership records. I sealed it in a black briefcase and locked it twice. The rain started outside, soft and steady. I stood by the window and breathed in the metallic scent. It was the same as that night I left home. But this time, the storm didn't scare me. It answered to me. I had built it line by line. And soon, I would release it. The conference room was silent after the click. The screen turned white, then filled with movement. 3 alerts fired across the global network. The lockdown began in less than 5 seconds. Bank accounts froze mid-transfer. Insurance flagged immediate investigation. The audit board received full disclosure in real time. Richard Vane stared at the screen, pale and wordless. The graph behind him glowed red with his wife's name. Isabel Vane. Northcrest Holdings. Harborline Systems. Each node connected, each lie documented. Evan tried to speak, but his voice collapsed into air. Thomas Pike's signature pulsed in the center like poison. I closed my laptop and stood up. No one followed. No one dared. Outside, the rain fell harder, washing the glass clean. The city lights bled into silver. I walked toward the elevator, briefcase in hand. Behind me, alarms began to echo through the floors. I didn't look back. Justice didn't need an audience. It only needed proof. And proof was all I ever had. The doors slid shut. My reflection stared back, calm and complete. The storm was over. And I was its architect.